Have you ever wondered why one woman is adored, prioritized, and respected, while another is breadcrumbed, sidelined, and constantly questioning her worth? It's not about looks. It's not about luck. It's about energy. The way you carry yourself teaches others how to treat you. Some women walk like queens, not because someone crowned them, but because they never let anyone treat them like less. And that one choice, it changes everything. The way a woman sees herself is the foundation for every interaction she has. Her self-perception is like an invisible signal that broadcasts to the world what she believes she deserves, and people, men especially, respond not just to her words, but to the standards she sets in her behavior, in her energy, and in the way she carries herself when no one is watching. When a woman knows her value deep in her bones, she teaches others how to treat her without ever having to demand it. She becomes the kind of woman who is respected from the moment she walks into a room, not because of arrogance or loudness, but because her energy says, "I won't settle for less than I deserve." People treat us according to the rules we set. A woman who allows disrespect will receive more of it. A woman who chases after someone who gives her breadcrumbs is teaching that person that crumbs are enough. But a woman who expects more, not because she's entitled, but because she knows her worth, naturally invites a different level of treatment. She doesn't have to shout her value, she lives it. She doesn't beg for attention, she commands it, not by force, but through clarity. There's a powerful distinction between wanting love and needing love to feel whole. The former adds to your life, the latter tries to fill a hole. When a woman sees herself as complete, she approaches relationships from a place of abundance. She's not looking for someone to complete her, she's looking for someone to complement her. This energy is rare, it's magnetic, it's the kind of energy that makes people take notice and realize they can't play games here. They either rise to the occasion or they leave. Men are wired to respond to challenge, not chaos. When a woman is grounded, when she's calm, when she has standards without being controlling, she creates an environment where only those who are serious step forward. And that seriousness doesn't have to be enforced, it's inspired. People sense what they can and can't get away with. If a woman constantly forgives disrespect without consequence, if she overextends to please someone who doesn't reciprocate, she's sending a message that she's willing to be chosen last and still show up first. But when a woman honors herself, her time, her body, her emotions, she sets the tone. She becomes the kind of person someone is afraid to lose, not out of fear, but because being in her presence feels like a privilege. That's when a man treats her like a queen, not because he's trying to manipulate her, but because he feels lucky to have earned space in her life. This begins internally. It doesn't come from dressing up, posting the perfect pictures, or saying all the right things. It comes from deep internal alignment. It comes from a woman deciding that she is no longer available for anything that depletes her peace. It comes from being willing to walk away from situations that don't meet her standards, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when it hurts. That kind of self-respect rewires how people treat her. A woman's confidence isn't about perfection. It's not about pretending she's never been hurt or never had doubts. It's about choosing herself anyway. It's about standing in front of the mirror and knowing that her worth isn't up for negotiation, that she doesn't have to prove herself to someone who doesn't see her value, that her life doesn't pause while someone makes up their mind about her. When she embraces that mindset, she shifts the entire dynamic. The truth is, people mirror back to us what we believe about ourselves. If she believes she has to earn love by proving herself, by sacrificing parts of her identity, she'll keep attracting people who require her to do that. But when she knows that love is not something to beg for, it's something to be invited into her already meaningful life, she attracts those who are ready to give, not just take. Some women are treated like options because they act like they have no options. They wait, they lower their standards, they become overly available for someone who's not matching their energy. That behavior doesn't come from weakness. It comes from fear, the fear of being alone, the fear of missing out, the fear of not being chosen. But ironically, it is by leaning into solitude, into self, trust into independence that a woman becomes deeply attractive, not in a performative way, but in a deeply grounded way. The woman who knows her value isn't waiting to be picked. She's living her life. She's building something. She's nurturing her own joy. And in doing so, she creates a standard. Anyone who enters her world has to bring value, has to bring effort, has to be intentional, because she won't make space for anything less. She doesn't have time for people who are unsure about her, because she is sure about herself. This is not about being hard, bitter, or unapproachable. It's about being clear. A woman who's clear about her value radiates a kind of warmth that draws in the right people and repels the wrong ones. She doesn't chase, she attracts, not because she's playing games, but because she respects herself too much to entertain anything that doesn't feel aligned with her truth. That's when a man shows up differently. That's when he brings consistency, intention, and effort, because he knows he's dealing with someone who won't accept anything less. All of this starts with self-image, how she talks to herself, how she prioritizes herself, how she chooses to respond when someone tests her boundaries. Every moment is an opportunity to teach people how to treat her, and every time she chooses herself, she reinforces the message that she's not an option. She's a whole damn prize. When she truly believes that, the world starts treating her that way too. There's a fine line between being emotionally available and being emotionally overexposed. It's a line many people unknowingly cross, especially in the early stages of attraction. The desire to connect, to bond, to be chosen often leads to behaviors that stem more from fear than confidence. And the sad irony is that in the attempt to draw someone closer, it often ends up pushing them away. When someone becomes too accessible too quickly, they lose the very magnetism that made them intriguing in the first place. Emotional availability is about openness, honesty, and vulnerability, but it must be balanced with discernment. It means being able to share without oversharing, to care without clinging, to show affection without smothering. There's strength in being able to express feelings, but there's also wisdom in pacing those expressions. When someone is too quick to give their all, before the other person has truly earned that depth, it can feel more like desperation than connection. That kind of energy doesn't make a person look like a prize. It makes them look like they are trying to win one. The truth is, people value what they earn, not what they're handed. When someone is too available, always saying yes, always waiting, always giving, it can start to feel like their time and energy don't carry much weight. Not because they aren't worthy, but because they haven't demonstrated that their time and love are something that need to be respected. People notice patterns. If someone rearranges their whole life to accommodate another person's whims, they're teaching that person they'll always be there, regardless of how they're treated. That creates imbalance. That creates the dynamic of being seen as an option instead of a priority. Being available is beautiful when it comes from a place of strength. It says, I'm here, I'm open, but I'm not losing myself in the process. When someone respects themselves, their availability is not unlimited. They give thoughtfully, they respond, not react. They show up when it's right, not just when they're lonely. And that self-control, that sense of self-containment is deeply attractive. It shows emotional maturity. It shows that they have a life, a rhythm, a purpose that's not defined by someone else's presence. Desperation, on the other hand, is not about how much someone gives, it's about why they're giving. When the motive is fear, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being chosen, it changes the energy behind every action. Compliments turn into overcompensation. Kindness turns into overextension. Generosity turns into self-sacrifice, and none of those things are sustainable. They drain the person giving, and they confuse the person receiving, because instead of creating safety, they create pressure. They create imbalance. They create the sense that one person is trying to earn the other rather than grow something together. The most magnetic individuals are those who bring their whole self to the table. Not just their attention or affection, but their standards, their identity, their independence. They're emotionally available, but not emotionally dependent. They don't need constant validation because they validate themselves. They don't need someone else to define their worth because they've already done that inner work. And because of that, they approach connection from a place of power, not panic. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to forget. That happens when someone shows that they care deeply but also live fully. When their life is so rich and full that their presence feels like an invitation, not a cry for attention. When someone knows that they're a whole person, with or without a relationship, they stop chasing and start choosing. They don't beg to be seen. They let the right people meet them where they are. There's nothing wrong with being excited about someone new. But when that excitement overrides balance, it often leads to poor decisions. Canceling plans, ignoring red flags, lowering boundaries, all in the name of proving worth or winning someone over. But love isn't something to be won. It's something to be shared between two people who both recognize the value of each other. When one person is giving far more than the other, it's not a relationship, it's a performance, and performances always end. What lasts is mutuality. The woman who values her time doesn't abandon it just because someone showed interest. She stays rooted in her routines, her passions, her goals. She doesn't disappear into the fantasy of who someone could be. She stays grounded in the reality of who she is. That doesn't make her distant, it makes her real, and real is rare. Real is what creates long-term attraction, not short bursts of intensity that burn out too quickly. When a woman becomes too available too fast, she removes the space needed for desire to grow. Mystery is not manipulation. It's the natural space where interest breathes. It allows both people to reflect, to evaluate, to choose. And that space is essential. When one person is always waiting, always ready, always giving, they remove the opportunity for the other to step up, to lead, to contribute. They rob the other of the experience of pursuit, and in doing so, often end up feeling neglected. Balance is the goal, connection without codependence, affection without overinvestment, availability without self-erasure. That's what draws in the right kind of person. The one who wants to meet you in the middle, not the one who expects you to do all the emotional labor. Being emotionally available means being open to love, not being empty without it. The irony is that the more someone centers their life around being chosen, the less likely they are to be seen as someone who must be chosen. Neediness doesn't inspire devotion. It inspires withdrawal, but independence, strength, and self-respect, they demand attention, not by force but by presence, and that presence is what makes someone unforgettable. Every time a woman prioritizes her peace over a person who brings chaos, every time she says no to something that drains her, every time she honors her own needs instead of people pleasing, she's reinforcing her worth. And that silent reinforcement shapes how others treat her, because she's not just available, she's valuable, and value doesn't chase, value attracts. Strong standards are not a threat to the right person. They are a filter. They separate those who are serious from those who are simply passing time. Too often, people lower their standards because they're afraid of coming across as too much, too picky, too demanding. But the reality is, what some call too much is often just clarity. And clarity is powerful. When someone knows exactly what they want and what they won't tolerate, they become a magnet for those who are aligned and a wall to those who aren't. There's a common belief that having standards will scare people away, and that belief causes many to settle, to compromise, to say yes when their heart says no. But the truth is, the only people who run from standards are the ones who had no intention of meeting them in the first place. The right person doesn't get intimidated by boundaries. They respect them. They're drawn to the security those boundaries create. They see them not as walls, but as guidance. Standards don't repel love. They protect it. They make sure that love enters through the right doors, not through desperation or confusion. When someone communicates what they expect, whether it's respect, consistency, honesty, or effort, they send a clear message about what kind of relationship they're looking to build. And people listen, even when they pretend not to. Every time a person chooses not to engage with someone who isn't meeting those expectations, they reinforce their own worth. It's not about being harsh or unkind. It's about having the courage to protect your peace, your energy, your emotional space. In relationships, what you tolerate teaches others how to treat you. If someone stays silent when disrespected, if they laugh off being ignored, if they continue showing up for someone who barely shows up for them, they're not being patient. They're being permissive. And permissiveness in the face of mistreatment invites more of the same. It tells the other person this is acceptable. But the moment someone raises the bar and backs it up with action, everything changes. Suddenly, inconsistency no longer gets access. Half-hearted effort gets no response. Disrespect meets distance. It's not enough to state standards. They must be lived. Anyone can say, "I want respect." But what matters is how they respond when they don't receive it. Do they walk away? Do they address it? Or do they shrink themselves, make excuses, and stay? That moment defines everything, because standards only work when they're backed by consequence. They don't require shouting or ultimatums. They require quiet conviction, a belief so deep in one's value that walking away doesn't feel like a loss, it feels like alignment. People who are not ready for a meaningful connection often interpret strong standards as control. But they're not about control, they're about clarity. Control tries to bend someone into shape. Clarity simply states, "This is what I need. If it's not you, that's okay." That energy is rare, it's graceful. It allows others to step up or step aside without manipulation, and in that space, truth reveals itself quickly. The people who are only looking for convenience will drift. The ones who are looking to build something real will rise. The fear of scaring someone away is often rooted in scarcity. A belief that if this person goes, there won't be another. But love isn't rare self, worth is. And when someone acts from self-worth, they realize that letting go of the wrong person is what makes room for the right one. It's not rejection, it's redirection. Every time someone leaves because your standards were too high, they're doing you a favor. Because they just showed you who they are before they could waste more of your time. Standards aren't about perfection. They don't mean expecting flawlessness. They mean expecting effort. They mean expecting presence. They mean expecting emotional safety. And those expectations are not unrealistic. They are foundational. Without them, relationships become guesswork, filled with assumptions, unmet needs, and quiet resentment. With them, relationships become intentional. They become a space where both people know what is expected, what is cherished, and what is non-negotiable. There's power in knowing that you don't have to explain your standards to everyone. You don't have to defend them. You don't have to argue them into existence. They're yours. You get to have them. And the people who are aligned with your values will not only accept them, they will appreciate them. Because standards create structure. They create a sense of safety. They show that you've thought deeply about what matters, and you're not willing to settle for less just to say you have someone. The world doesn't need more people pretending to be okay with what they're not okay with. It needs more people who are brave enough to say, "This doesn't work for me," and mean it, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. It needs people who would rather be alone in peace than together in confusion. People who understand that the fear of being alone is not a reason to compromise the things that keep them whole. Strong standards simplify everything. They eliminate the wrong options quickly. They reduce drama, confusion, and emotional chaos. And they create space for something deeper, something lasting. When someone with strong standards meets another person willing to meet them, there's no need for games. There's no need for guessing. There's no imbalance of power. There's just connection, built on mutual respect and shared intention. And that's the kind of connection that lasts, not because it's perfect, but because it's grounded in truth. Standards don't block love. They shape it. They ensure that love is given and received in a way that honors both people. So the next time someone walks away because they couldn't meet your standards, don't shrink, don't bend, don't lower the bar. Because the person who's meant for you will never ask you to lower it. They'll rise to meet it, and they'll be grateful you never settled. In relationships, the balance of emotional investment sets the tone for how each person is valued and treated. When one person consistently gives more than they receive, more time, more effort, more emotional energy, they begin to create an imbalance that shapes the entire dynamic. That imbalance sends a message, whether intentional or not. I need this more than you do. And when someone feels they don't need to match effort to receive your energy, it becomes easy for them to grow complacent. What starts as affection quickly becomes assumption. What was once effort turns into expectation. And slowly, one person starts to feel like a priority while the other begins to feel like an option. People are wired to respect what they have to work for. That's not a game, it's human nature. When someone sees that your emotional energy is given freely with no boundaries, no pacing, no requirement for consistency, they begin to feel entitled to it. They take it for granted, not out of malice, but because it was never earned. On the other hand, when emotional investment is tied to a person's consistent actions, when kindness, attention, and affection are responses to real effort, they learn to value the connection. They understand that your heart isn't up for grabs just because they show interest. It's something that requires responsibility to hold. There's a difference between being generous with your emotions and being reckless with them. Emotional generosity says, I'm open to love, I'm open to connection, but I also have standards. Emotional recklessness says, I'll give everything up front and hope it's enough to keep you. That approach doesn't build mutual respect, it builds pressure. It creates a situation where one person is constantly trying to prove their worth while the other is simply deciding whether they want to stay. That's not a partnership, that's emotional gambling. True emotional connection should feel like a dance, not a chase. Each person should be stepping toward the other, not one person chasing while the other steps back. When both people are investing equally, not necessarily in identical ways, but with the same level of presence and intention, trust begins to grow. Safety is created. That safety is what allows vulnerability to deepen. It's what allows love to mature. But when emotional effort is one-sided, the dynamic starts to crack, resentment builds, insecurity surfaces. And the person doing the most starts to wonder why it never feels like enough. The solution lies in pacing emotional investment. It's not about withholding feelings or playing games. It's about matching energy. If someone makes an effort to be present, listen, and show up, it makes sense to reciprocate. But if someone is inconsistent, vague, or distant, giving them your whole heart anyway is a recipe for pain. Love must be built on equal contribution, not blind hope. Matching emotional investment isn't cold or calculating. It's respectful, both to yourself and to the connection you're trying to build. One of the most empowering realizations is that you don't owe anyone more than they've given. If someone hasn't shown consistency, you don't owe them commitment. If someone hasn't been emotionally present, you don't owe them vulnerability. If someone hasn't invested effort, you don't owe them intimacy. Emotional connection should be mutual. It should be earned, nurtured, and honored by both people. Anything else is not love, it's imbalance. So many people fall into the trap of trying to win someone over with more love. They believe that if they just give a little more, care a little harder, or prove themselves a little further, the other person will finally reciprocate. But that mindset keeps them stuck. It keeps them attached to potential instead of reality. And potential is dangerous. It creates false hope. It keeps people emotionally invested in situations that are not reciprocated, not healthy, and not growing. Matching emotional effort means being observant. It means paying attention to how someone makes you feel, not just what they say. Words are easy. It's the consistent effort, the small actions, the presence during hard times, that reveal someone's true level of investment. If someone only shows up when it's convenient, or when they need something, or when you've pulled away. It's not connection, it's control. And the longer you continue to overinvest, the more you train them that inconsistency is acceptable. Respect begins when you start to mirror the energy you receive. If they're emotionally present, you respond with presence. If they make an effort to understand you, you offer the same. But if they withdraw, delay, or treat you like an option, it's not your job to work harder. It's your signal to pull back. You are not responsible for teaching someone how to love. You are responsible for protecting your own peace. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is to make sure that your emotional output matches what you're receiving. This doesn't mean closing your heart. It means protecting it. It means letting people earn access to the deeper parts of you through their behavior, not just their charm. It means remembering that emotional safety is built, not given freely. The people who are serious about you will not be deterred by your standards. They won't walk away just because you expect effort. They will appreciate the boundaries because it shows that you have value and that you respect yourself enough not to settle for anything less than mutual love. When emotional investment is mutual, everything changes. The relationship becomes a place of safety instead of struggle. Love flows freely, not forcefully. Each person feels seen, heard, and appreciated. There is no imbalance of power because each person knows their worth and each person is willing to show up fully. That is the space where real love can grow, not in chasing, not in proving, but in mutual emotional effort offered with care, intention, and respect. The strength of a connection isn't measured by how hard one person is willing to fight for it. It's measured by how equally both people are willing to meet each other in the middle. When you only give to those who give back, when you invest where there is reciprocity, when you match effort with effort, you shift from being an option to being a priority. Not because you begged for it, but because you refused to accept anything less. And that is how you are treated with the love and respect you deserve.